Hey, before we get going, I have a discount code for you. Growers & Co. is offering No-Till Market Garden podcast listeners 15% off orders over $150 for use on all clothing, tools, accessory, and the magazine. Have you checked out the Growers & Co. magazine yet? The magazine's amazing. So is the clothing, so are the tools. That offer code is No-Till-Growers15, all one word, no caps, number 15. I will put it in the show notes as well. This offer code is valid through December 30th, 2020. It can be used at growers.co, which, for the uninitiated, is the clothing, tool, and apparel company founded by Jean-Martin Fortier, the market gardener. They make clothing for the growers who do precisely the kind of work we talk about on the podcast. If you are a market gardener or an aspiring one, Growers & Co. has designed their products around your needs. The goal of Growers & Co. is to be a brand that represents the dignity, skills, and creativity required to do this work. Learn more or use that code, again, No-Till-Growers15, at growers.co. The show is also brought to you by BCS America.
BCS two-wheel tractors power dozens of professional quality, PTO-driven attachments for soil working, mowing, property maintenance, snow removal, and more. BCS tractors are famous for their durability and versatility, with handlebars that rotate 180 degrees for front and rear mount implements. And now, BCS has introduced a game changer in the two-wheel tractor world, Model 770 with hydrostatic drive. Model 770's easy grip lever enables the operator to precisely select ground speed and direction of travel without the need to shift or vary the throttle. This is extremely useful for heavy mowing or snow clearing jobs where constant changes in direction or speed are necessary. Now you can keep the flail mower running at full RPM while you mow forward, reverse, and forward again, all without the need to shift or re-engage the PTO. The hydrostatic Model 770 is on sale now. Check out bcsamerica.com for sale pricing and to find your nearest dealer. That's bcsamerica.com.
Huge thanks to our show sponsors. Okay, let's jam. Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, Episode 9, Season 3. Golly, we are blowing through this season already. Anyway, got a great episode for you all this week with Beau Belmont and Paul Wargo of Mountain Roots Farm. They're down in Eastern Tennessee doing a really cool collaboration there. I'm telling you, more and more farm collaborations popping up. We talk about a bunch of different stuff from their hyper-productive quarter-acre market gardens to their composting operation and how they get a lot of the material through Paul's tree service. Like if you're going to have a previous career or a second job to complement no-till market gardening, tree service is a pretty good one. Anyway, it's a great conversation and I am super excited to share it. Before we get going, make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're getting it. Also, make sure to subscribe to our buddy Troy Hinkey's podcast of Living Roots Compost Tea. The podcast is called What's Brewing. His episode specifically on brewing compost tea is coming up on Friday. But check out that whole series before. You can binge on it, right? Because we're nerds and that's what we do. You can binge on it. It's great. Other than that, let's get into this amazing conversation with Paul and Beau of Mountain Roots Farm. Paul Wargo, Beau Belmont, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us, Jesse.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have you all. So, all right, so let's start by talking a little bit about your farm. Where are you located? What size acreage are you working on? And those sorts of things?
So we're located in Sevierville, Tennessee. We're about 45 minutes east of Knoxville, which is our primary market where we sell most of our produce. We're kind of at the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains. And the size of the farm is pretty much, we've got a little over a quarter acre under cultivation. We've got 5.5 acres here that I own with my partner in a tree service, another business that we have. And then Beau and I utilize about a quarter acre, a little more than a quarter acre for production space, kind of really spread out, just taking advantage of the most level land that was here on the property.
Great. And Beau, can you tell us a little bit about like the sort of history?
Yeah. So we are kind of, our backgrounds are not farming at all. I was a brewer for several years. Paul had his tree service for, I believe, 10 years or so before we even started the farm. but we both kind of knew we wanted to do something else and work for the better good of ourselves and our families and know where our food comes from. So whether that was animals or vegetables or whatever, so we just kind of partnered up and just always had little projects going, whether it was raising meat birds to slaughter for ourselves or, helping Paul. He had a couple pigs and a cow. So we really got into Curtis Stone back in, I think, 2016 on his YouTube videos, and that really led us down a path of, hey, we could make some money. This could be a moneymaker for us, doing something in small scale agriculture, and it was vegetables because of Curtis's examples. So in 2017, we formed the farm as a business, and we started to put future plots under cover crops and some homemade compost that Paul made basically over the past couple of years that we collected material from, and officially started the farm going to market in 2018. And we both had full-time jobs at that time, so just harvesting in the mornings because we had flexible jobs, and then going to our 9 to 5s, and then coming back on the farm and doing cultivation plantings in the afternoons, and then going to market on Saturday. So 2018 was our first real official year. And then in 2019, the farm was allowed for one full-time employee, and that kind of by default came to me. So I went on full-time in April of 2019. And then Paul is part-time on the farm as well. So
nice. And could you talk? You mentioned the market. Is that the only way that you're selling produce is farmers market?
That's our primary sales is the market for sure. We do some restaurant sales, and then we also, when COVID happened, we opened an online store, and that's really been great for us actually. Even if everything goes back to quote unquote normal, we'll always have that online store because it's just a great way to get vegetables to people that are local, for one thing, because our market's 45 minutes away. And we've got people in the neighborhood basically we're in now that are always wanting vegetables, and they didn't want to go to Knoxville to get them. And it felt kind of weird that we weren't selling anything in our general area. Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of locals will buy online and pick up at the farm on Fridays. So, but yeah, the market is definitely, it's a great market in Knoxville, put on by Nourish Knoxville. And we're really lucky to have it. We're able to move a lot of produce there.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that idea that the locals can actually buy food from you this way more easily than having to go all the way to Knoxville or necessarily get you all the harvest on a different day or something. Can you talk a little bit about that business structure? Because it's two different families running it, correct?
Yeah, it is. We set up an LLC, and my wife and myself, and then Beau and his wife we're all partners in the business. And so it's set up as an LLC, and where we've got divided, percentages, and it's allowed us to treat it more as a business and keep it somewhat professional, and even though we kind of went into this with more of a little bit of a laid back attitude, but in the end we realized that setting it up properly was definitely a good way to go about it.
Right. Were there challenges in terms of like asset management, like who brought what to the business, or you're using one person's land? Like, how did you kind of work through those details?
So I think we were relatively laid back. My partner in the tree service is relatively laid back, and he's fine with just as long as we've got the land. Beau and I kind of help take care of the kind of the common areas, if you will, around the gardens, and so it eases a little bit of burden off of my partner in the tree service and myself with having to maintain some of those spaces. And so and then we provide him with vegetables kind of when he needs them or when he wants them. And so there's no monetary exchange as far as the use of the land. Beau and I have made a lot of improvements here at the farm as far as like water and getting water to the plots, and building a washing shed onto an existing barn, and a few of those things that we obviously paid for, and have made improvements to the land too. So it does benefit. We think it's a mutually beneficial relationship with kind of everybody, and so it's worked out pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. And then, but you're also looking at new land, or you just bought new land, right? Beau, do you want to kind of jump in on that?
Yeah. So we did. Oh, when was that, Paul? Back early 2019, I think we bought it.
Yes, spring of 2019.
Yeah, April 2019, we bought, not through the farm, but as the two families, Paul's and mine, purchased about 17 and a half acres, right 15 minutes outside of downtown Knoxville. I believe 15 of it is wooded, and the rest is cleared, sloped. It used to be an old pasture just for a couple animals years ago, but it's the cleared area is about 3 acres, and it was pretty heavily sloped. But for the price we could get it at compared to other land in the area, and how close it is to Knoxville, it was just kind of a no-brainer to purchase it, and we would work the land to make it work for us as a market garden space. So, and we just now, 2 or 3 months ago, just started doing all the major earthworks on it. They're done now, but we moved a lot of dirt. We hired an excavator to basically take the hill down and make it a level surface, like Paul was saying. I forget how much, Paul, what was how many dump loads?
They probably moved 10,000 cubic yards worth of material or more.
Wow.
So basically starting uphill and kind of moving it down into pretty much 2 big terraces. That's going to give us about 3/4 of an acre growing space. So.
Yeah, it looks like we're putting a Dollar General in there now.
That's great.
It'll look a lot different soon.
That's great. The tree service thing is really fascinating. I imagine there's a lot of, like, you get to kind of pick and choose some of your materials. So can you talk about how you work that into the farm and some of the ways in which, I don't know, how you've utilized that?
Sure, yeah. So I think I've always, for the past maybe 5 or 6 years, I've been fascinated with just the process of composting. Bringing truckloads of mulch basically back to the farm, just chipped up branches, basically wood chips, and watching how they heat up and monitoring those temperatures and things. It was something that was very fascinating to me, I guess, ever since we started kind of growing food and trying to figure out ways we could kind of utilize those materials to our benefit. Saw a lot of value in those materials, and I started noticing, when we were utilizing taking down trees that, say, midsummer that were full of green leaves and got a lot of that nitrogen material. It's a little bit better of a carbon nitrogen ratio. You get more long sustained heat out of those piles, and those leaves break down rather quickly, and turn to soil. And I started seeing how much worm activity there was through some of those piles, and started using them as a major carbon source for compost piles. We would also, for the past 3 or 4 years, we also collect fall decorations. We live in a very touristy area, so there's always a lot of straw bales, pumpkins, a lot of organic matter, basically, that they're just trying to get people, these shop owners are just trying to get rid of. And so we started collecting things and making big compost piles, and using the wood chips also. And they turn into such beautiful soil. And when you leave them sit for a while, you see just how kind of fungally active they become, and you see lots of mushrooms growing on the piles. And so it's really got us excited about using some of that and to getting it over to the new farm here in the next 4 to 5 months when we start really setting up the new growing space.
Yeah, and then you got I think you mentioned before we started recording that you got a new tool that's going to help with that, like a screen, right? How does that kind of play into things?
Yeah, so basically we're taking material, wood chips that are maybe a year to a year and a half old, so they're pretty good and decomposed and have turned into a lot of great usable soil. We turn them periodically, maybe once a month. I've kind of got them in a long windrow, and I just kind of push them downhill with the tractor, and they're broken down quite nicely, and so we decided to buy a piece of equipment that's a vibratory screener. So it's just a little 110 electric. You can either plug it in wherever you have power or run it off a little like 3,500 watt generator. And so it's a super mobile system where you can just kind of move around wherever you need it, really. And so what we're doing is we're in the process, when we've got time, we're just screening this material down to about a 3-inch size. And we're going to start exporting that over to the new farm to get all that organic matter incorporated into the new growing space. Of course, when they excavated those pads, there's a lot of red clay. A lot of, our areas are kind of known for red clay. And so initially what we did was we scraped off all the topsoil, maybe 600 to 800 cubic yards, and we've piled it up downhill, and we're going to start bringing that back on to the growing space, and then also all those screened wood chips, and just kind of homogenizing those three materials basically to get some good organic matter and some good life back in the soil.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's like I think of, what a lot of people do is put down compost and maybe till it in or maybe not, but that is like such a next level version of that.
Yeah, we just see so much value in getting more fungal activity, hopefully into the soil, and just having those, even if there's not a lot of fungal activity in it now, when we get those broken down, those small wood chip particles into the soil, and we get, after we do our initial tillage, we'll essentially, not be doing any more deep tillage. And so we're hoping that fungal mass that's in there will kind of just kind of take off and, start doing its thing and multiplying and working with the plants to grow, better quality plants.
Yeah, and we've over the last couple of years, we've just been more and more disappointed with the quality of compost that we're able to get down here. We were using mushroom compost, which we were growing pretty good vegetables out of it, but it arrived extremely hot, not a finished product. And we see the stuff that we could make on property is just for one thing, we know where all the material comes from. That makes us feel good. A lot of it's coming from within 10 miles of here, if not on property. And the quality of that product is so much better than what we could get before. So that's a big motivator too.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's definitely something that I wish, on our own farm that we could do more of, but that, being able to control the inputs. Did you all, I kind of vaguely remember now that we're talking about it. Did you all have an issue with compost, persistent herbicide in your compost?
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not exactly sure. It came from one of two sources, we believe. So when I mentioned those fall decorations, that straw, we were using a lot of straw for that carbon material. And so later to find out that straw, actually, the common practice is to spray that with an herbicide to kill it so that it all is nice and dead and harvestable. And so it either came from there, or I was getting some horse manure from a friend of mine down the road, and wasn't sure if that was possibly coming off of some sprayed alfalfa that he was feeding. And so we kind of boiled it down to either one of those two sources. We started using some of that product, and it was super nice, when you looked at it and everything. But we started noticing some ill effects on tomatoes and beans, some of nightshades. Basically, we were getting that cupping effect. And yeah, so that was another big motivator of trying to figure out ways that we can collect organic materials, grow our own organic materials, source those materials that we know are going to be clean resources, and start doing more of our own composting.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like that's one of the terrifying things about getting into systems that rely more heavily on compost, such as deep compost mulch and those sorts of things, is that sourcing is so it can be so risky, and it can be very nerve-wracking to just not know one season from the next whether or not your source is going to come in and contaminate. Yeah, it's nice to know that what you have going into your garden. Speaking of that, I'd love to hear a little bit about your soil management practices, like your sort of basic philosophy. You kind of talked about how you're going to start these next gardens. Can you go into that in a little bit more detail? Like, give us a sort of what it looks like from scratch, like how you're going to go about it, whether or not you're going to raise your beds down there. I feel like that's not a question I ask enough. And those sorts of things. Like, maybe take us from the beginning.
Sure, Paul. I'll start, and I guess just
Okay.
jump in.
Sure.
But so the pads are I mean, it's almost like walking on a clay pot at this point. So so the first step, what we're going to do is Paul's got. I guess we should mention that Paul has before we started the farm, he's got a small Kubota tractor that he was using with the tree service, and we're lucky to use it for stirring compost and moving things around the farm. We don't actually use it in the plots at all, but it definitely is a labor saver on a lot of things. So he has got is it a subsoiler, Paul, or a ripper?
Yeah, ripper subsoiler. Yep.
And we believe we're going to go through with that first, just to aerate that clay. Is that right?
Yeah, we're just going to go through and rip that up just to loosen it up, so that when we get the topsoil put on, basically we're going to come in with the topsoil and spread that maybe 4 or 5 inches thick, and then start moving some of that wood-based compost, wood chip-based compost on to incorporate all that together. But yeah, ripping up that clay is kind of trying to get it ripped down to maybe 10 or 12 inches. So go ahead, Beau.
And then after that, our plan is to get a cover crop on as much space as we can move material on. We're kind of, we're getting close to winter, and we don't know if we can get we probably won't get a cover crop on this year, but as soon as we can next year, we'll get a cover crop on that, and probably a quicker crop, and then till that in. And that'll probably be the last time we need to till. And then from there, we'll measure our beds, and we'll probably just stake our beds, walk out our pathways, and then throw finished compost on top of the beds. And we rely on the precision depth roller for the BCS. We really like that tool. We use the tilther, the Elliott Coleman's tilther as well, but the PDR really makes a nice bed. It's quick. We really like that tool. So ideally we'll stake our beds out, we'll put our lines down, we'll put our compost down, and then PDR, and then hopefully just direct seed and transplant into that. But we do want to start doing more of the Firth Farm Daniel Mays technique of putting a living cover crop, growing a cover crop on the bed, crimping it, covering it with a tarp, and then transplanting back into it. That's another option we want on some later spring plantings, is our idea. So
Other than that, yeah, just we'll probably do like a soil test, and then from there, we'll also throw on some amendments, whatever the soil test comes back to be.
Yeah.
Okay, right on. Yeah. So, are you expanding this garden? Like, is this going to be? Forgive me if you mentioned this, but is this going to be bigger than the quarter acre that you're working on now in terms of how much is under cultivation?
Yeah. So we're going to be. Yeah, we'll pretty much be tripling our production space, and so we'll be up to 3/4 of an acre with we could excavate a little bit out more on the upper pad, but I think we're going to be close to 3/4 of an acre, and as far as annual crops, and then hopefully some perennial things on the outskirts of irregular shaped areas that we're going to have for perennial type crops that we're interested in growing.
Nice. And then in terms of finances, are you planning to both try and work towards fully full-time on the farm, or are you going to keep that extra, the tree service job and that sort of stuff? Like, is your goal to kind of just be full-time farming, or are you kind of happy to have a little bit of both?
The goal is as soon as it's financially viable to have Paul be full-time on the farm, and we're shooting for that for next year, along with maybe some side jobs here and there that we both can maybe make a little extra money if we had the time throughout the season. But that's been our goal since day one, is to try to get us both be full-time on the farm.
Yep.
Nice. And is it just you two? I mean, I know that Paul, your partners, you said was out washing produce. Is there, how many people are on the farm, or do you have any employees or anything?
Yeah, it's just us. So it's I'm full-time Monday through Friday, and then market Saturday, and Paul is Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday he's either doing market or, one of us are either at market or at the farm on Saturday generally, if there's things that need to be done here at the farm. And then, back in probably June, Paul's wife, Alicia, was able to, her mother was able to watch their two little girls for her to kind of take a break from the kids for a couple hours during the day and come out and help us harvest. And then we did have another employee for probably about, what do you think, Paul, 5 weeks or so? That was part-time.
A couple months.
A couple months. She was part-time. She was doing Thursdays and Fridays as well, pretty much helping us with the harvests in that crossover time of May and June, when we still had a lot of spring stuff coming in and all of our summer stuff was coming on as well. So
nice. So I want to talk a little bit about some specific crop breakdowns, because you do, I've seen beets, carrots, radishes, and those sorts of things. I'm wondering if we can kind of talk about some of those crops and then get into some of the ways in which you maybe like spacing and planting and those sorts of things. Is there one of those that stands out that maybe you'd want to kind of break down for us?
Yeah. So I'll jump in, and I think it's kind of, like, for an example, the beets. I think it's one that we've struggled with a little bit in the beginning, direct seeding, and we moved to the paper pot and really like the product and the consistency that we're getting with being able to control spacing a little bit better, and get a pretty nice uniform product, I guess you'd say. That's been one for us. We definitely noticed that growing beets under tunnels, I think, like a lot of growers, you yourself would say too, that having those caterpillar tunnels is very handy and very nice with the beets year round. Even in the summertime, we've been able to get away with getting some pretty decent quality things, other than having some worm pressures like I think most growers would in the South. And just all the time trying to get better at those things, and roots in particular, because they're great sellers, and carrots too.
That beets, maybe we could talk for a second a little bit more in depth about those beets, because I definitely agree. Beets love tunnels, and I don't entirely know why. There's been some sort of theories lobbed about potentially, maybe the little bit of shade on the plastic helps reduce the pressure, the sun pressure. Maybe the a little bit more carbon dioxide is trapped in the tunnel for them to photosynthesize. Whatever it is, the beet greens, when you grow them under a tunnel, it's extraordinary. Which paper pot are you using, and do you have any tips for which chains are you using, and do you have any tips for when to get those out in the field? Because I know there is sometimes a chance of overgrowing them.
Yeah, we use so we're doing 4-inch paper pot chains with our beets, and in the spring we do Zeppo, and then when the spring starts warming up a little bit, this year we turned to the monogerm seed from Johnny's. I think it's called Moneta. Yes, I think. So then we would singulate, still on that 4-inch chain, so it'd be just one plant per cell. With the Zeppo, we'd get anywhere from 1 to 4 plants per cell. And in the springtime, that worked out great. We just noticed that the tops, the Cercosporia was a little bit lower when we singulated that monogerm seed in the 4-inch chains. There was just better air movement around each individual plant.
Yeah, that's great. I love the Zeppo, but yeah, getting those, and for somebody who's listening who maybe doesn't realize or doesn't know that the beets, multiple seeds can be in that pod. Same with chard. So oftentimes you get too many plants. Are you thinning those Zeppos, or are you just letting them go if there's 4 plants in a pod?
We're generally just letting them go. And, at our market, they're pretty forgiving as far as some people want the little guys and some people want the big guys. And we try to grab the larger roots first, and we'll usually do at least 2 weeks of harvest, say on a 50-foot bed of beets, sometimes even 3, and trying to let the smaller ones size up a little bit more to have more marketable size. But we can still sell. Some people actually want more of the golf ball sized beets for some reason, so we're able to move all of them.
Yeah, I found that small stuff, I never hesitate to bring it because somebody wants it small. Like even with sweet potatoes, we bring pretty small sweet potatoes and we put them in a pint. And you'd be shocked that how many people, maybe farmers wouldn't be shocked, but I was kind of surprised how many people really like smaller stuff. So yeah, it's worth bringing baby beets sometimes, especially if you just need to harvest them out.
Little farm, little veg.
Yeah, right. Perfect. What's this? How many rows are you doing on a bed for the beets?
We're doing 3. When we were direct seeding, we were doing 4, and we were direct seeding with the Earthway, and it was just you'd have a large cluster, like a 5-foot radius of just way too many roots, and then there'd be a big gap of nothing. So we found that at that spacing, three rows per 30-inch bed, it really works out well. We're able to sell pretty much every root that comes out of it.
Nice. Okay, so I want to move to carrots because that's another crop you all do really well, and I'm wondering if you'll kind of share your sort of carrot strategy.
Yeah, so we use the Jang, and typically we're doing 4 rows per 30-inch bed. And as far as, we definitely grow some different varieties, Mokum being one, during the spring and even into the late spring. And then this year we tried Yaya for the summer and had pretty good success with those under the tunnel as well, the caterpillar tunnel, and have definitely tried to do more of like a bolero type for late summer, early fall plantings for fall, late fall and winter harvest. And haven't mastered it by any means, but we're doing a decent job, and we're either using, like with the Jang, we're using the XY roller. We usually leave it at a 1/2-inch spacing. Sometimes we'll space it out to 1 inch, and that seems to get us pretty good results. Or sometimes we'll just use that X roller, always the 24 hole either the X24 or the XY24. And then we're just kind of adjusting the brush, trying to get, 2 to 3 seeds per hole there.
Yeah, those X rollers are great. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, and I was going to add, in the summertime, we're using a shade cloth directly on the bed for about 4 days, making sure it stays nice and moist. And then on like day 5, we're flaming that, and then the next day they're pretty much coming up, and in the height during the quick growing season.
Nice. And you're not putting that shade cloth back on, I'm assuming.
No.
Yeah, that's cool. There's always something about summer carrots, finding the right tool for that job, for getting them to germinate. Like I've tried, I feel like row cover gets a little bit too hot, but shade cloth is a cool one. I know we've had good success too with white plastic, the bottom side of the silage tarp, for germinating summer carrots, but I'm always looking for new techniques. Shade cloth right against the soil. That's cool. And that's not hoop. That's just flat against the soil.
Flat against the soil.
Yeah. Cool. I want to talk. Can I get you to spill the beans on one more? No pun intended. Sprouting broccoli. What about that one? This is a crop that I think is really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about how you're doing sprouting broccoli and, any thoughts you have on that one?
This year, in the spring, we grew it once last year, and then this year in the springtime, we put it on we kind of did a little bit of an experimental swale and berm area on one of our slopes here at the farm, and we built that last fall and put a good amount of homemade compost on it, and put a cover crop on it and crimped it and everything, and then killed it with a tarp, and then planted into that. And so that top of that berm was, what do you think, Paul? 4 feet?
Yeah, close to 4 feet.
Yeah. So on that, we did 3 rows, but we staggered them. I believe we were doing 2-foot spacing, and then we'd stagger that center row at 1 foot in between. And it did really, really well. The spring crop it produced for over a month.
About 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yes, 6 or 7 weeks. It was kind of difficult to harvest that, having that middle row. There was a lot more reaching, and it just wasn't it wasn't the easiest harvest, but it produced so well that, we really liked the results of it. And on those berm beds, we really didn't have to do any cultivating. There just wasn't. I think we hand weeded it once when they were young, and that was about it. And they really did great with that. Last year we grew Happy Rich. This year, Johnny's had a crop failure on Happy Rich, so we did the BC 1600 or something close to that?
1611.
1611.
Yeah.
And that crop, it performed just as well, if not better than Happy Rich. I think a few more days to maturity, but the flavor is great. The stems are tender. You can have a floret with an 8-inch stem, and that stem is tender all the way down. So we try to tell people, grill these up. They're just delicious all the way down. They're nice and tender and juicy and sweet. It just has better flavor than just normal crown broccoli, and we really try to stress that with people. And we've had no trouble moving large quantities of that at our market. People are really interested in it. And then in the fall, right now, we've got them in a tunnel. And we did 2 rows on a 30-inch bed, staggered. I believe we did the 2-foot spacing again, but staggered as well in the rows. And they're not performing as well in the fall as they did in the summer, as they did in the spring. So that's to be expected, I guess.
Yeah, sure. What's the marketing? Are you just you said pretty long stems. Are you popping the stems and then banding them?
We did that with the Happy Rich, and with this new variety, it doesn't. Sometimes you get a stem that's not as long. It's not as consistent. So you'll get a stem that could be 8 inches with a nice crown on it, and then on that same plant next to it, there's a nice fat crown, but the stem's only about 3 or 4 inches. So we turn to putting them in bags and leaving them open, so people can just buy that. And we sell them in half-pound increments, and we're getting $5 a bag for that, which is a great price for us, and people really enjoy the product. So
yeah, that's cool. It's a crop I love, and we don't grow it enough, but it's kind of inspired me to want to keep growing it. Okay, so I want to talk about bed turnover. What is your sort of approach with crops, maybe like a broccoli or something with a stem that's not necessarily harvested out? What's your sort of approach to the bed flip?
I think here in the last year, last season and a half or so, I think we've been leaning more towards, if we can leave the roots in the ground, we're definitely going to do that. So we're just gonna chop that off a little bit below the soil surface with either like a heavy duty lettuce harvest knife, or even sometimes just like a sawzall maybe even works pretty good. And we're just taking all that material out and throwing it into the compost pile, just so that we can get into the bed pretty quickly after, because we're on such limited land base, like we said, just a little over a quarter acre. A lot of our beds get turned over quite quickly, and we don't have the luxury of, like, say, for example, flailing all that material and leaving it on the bed, covering it and getting some breakdown in there. We don't really have the luxury of having that time on our production space. So most of it comes out, and then from there we're just either you can definitely go around and direct seed, or preferably transplant something else in there around those roots. Maybe like some lettuce heads or something else like that that we grow a lot of, and we plant every couple of weeks.
Are you doing much in the way of, forgive me if you mentioned this, but are you doing much in the way of fertilizer? Like, are you adding? Yeah,
definitely. Especially on a heavy feeder like after broccoli, we definitely would come in with. We use this season. We used a 4-product blend, which was alfalfa, kelp, bonefish meal, and feather meal. And so we were using that in different quantities, and then composting too, if that was available. We typically tried to, not every bed flip, but most we would try to come in with a 5-gallon bucket for every 10 feet as far as compost goes, and then just lightly incorporating that in with the tilther. With the crop like broccoli, it's maybe a little bit more difficult, but if you're cutting below that soil surface, you can usually get the tilther over there and just kind of lightly run it across to incorporate the compost and the fertilizer in.
Yeah, nice. Is there one thing I've been neglecting to do a little bit more this season is talk about maybe things that didn't work? Do you have any maybe crop failures, or just not even crop failures, things that you tried that didn't work that may be enlightening for somebody who's interested in that?
We've had some intercropping failures this year. We want to get more diverse in our intercropping, but we seem to lean a lot towards radish or hackerite turnips, just because they grow quickly. But we know that they're not really communicating well with the other plants around them. But one thing we did, we like to intercrop radish with like kale or some greens that we're going to clear out the canopy every week. We're going to harvest that kale. It's going to create more space for those radishes to grow up in and around the kale. But one thing we did try was we put hackerite turnips and radishes in with on the day we transplanted, with our cauliflower and cabbage, and the canopy just grew over much too fast to allow those small roots to size up enough to sell. And at this point, they're just, we're just going to tear them out because they're not getting any sunlight or anything like that. So that's one failure. Paul, can you think of anything else?
I think that was definitely the big thing.
Yeah, I think like some of the radishes are fun because they're so fast and you can kind of put them everywhere. But it isn't the worst thing to have them in there. I always feel like they're gathering nutrients of some sort that something can use.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they're non-mycorrhizal associated, that isn't necessarily always a bad thing.
Sure.
Especially for other brassicas. I feel like that's one crop that pairing the two together, and I don't have any science or research behind this. This is just observation that pairing two different kinds of brassicas together actually has been pretty functional for us because, I don't know, I think that brassicas kind of create a very specific environment for themselves. It seems to me that they really enjoy going back into. So, what about, are there intercroppings that you generally do that you really like? I mean, you mentioned the radishes. Are there others?
Oh, yeah.
No, we definitely like filling in the gaps of things with. We always like that Jared's Real Food idea of it's not really intercropping, but I guess you could say it's kind of, to some degree, it is just filling in spaces and plugging in holes with lettuce, head lettuces, whether that's just like little gems or full size heads, depending on what kind of space you have to fill those in. We haven't, to be honest, Jesse, we haven't played a whole lot with the intercropping. It's definitely one thing we want to do more of. We ran like parsley underneath the tomatoes this year, and it seemed to be a good combination, although we had some thrip troubles with the parsley in one of the tunnels. But that seemed like a pretty good intercropping there. Some long season crops, and the parsley definitely benefit from shade. I think from the tomatoes. Anything else?
Yeah,
Beau?
Yeah. We did red vein sorrel as well, intercropped on the edge of tomato beds, which did well, but it just was not a hot seller. So it looks beautiful, but it wasn't. Financially, it didn't make sense to keep doing that. Maybe if we could find a niche market for that crop, which it probably wouldn't be hard to do because it's so beautiful. That's one we'd probably do again as well.
Yeah, it's funny because as soon as you said the sorrel, I was like, well, I got to ask them how they're marketing that because it's so beautiful, but it is not an easy one to move. I guess you could put it in salad mixes maybe or something. Chefs, obviously, that's one of the big markets, but obviously they're having a harder time in COVID than most. Hey, you all, just jumping in real quick to get a word from our sponsors this week, like Ramblin' Farmers. Seasoned farm hands are hard to come by, especially for temporary help. With 5 years experience on over 12 farms, Ramblin' Farmers are ready to jump in and help you get the job done. They're independent contractors willing to travel. Learn more at ramblinfarmers.com. The show is also brought to you by you, the patrons. Our patrons are the absolute best. I appreciate each and every one of you so much. If you love this show and if you want to support it and see it keep going and growing and all of those good things, go to patreon.com/no-till growers and consider signing up. And at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Joel Fitzgerald, Rimmel Greenhouse Systems, Scott Snodgrass, Jody Miller, Shane and Emma of Aslan Organics, Travis and Heidi of Arcadia Acres, JM Fortier, and Yannick LaPlante. Huge thanks to all of our show supporters. Okay, back to the interview. Speaking of COVID, are there other takeaways from the pandemic that have kind of changed how you're planning your next season?
I think for us, we want to continue with the online store, and we're just always thinking about other ways. Let's say there's not a market, or let's say if we get back to, because I know we didn't talk about this earlier, but our typical market year, the last in 18 and 19, we're at Market Square, which is just a bustling area in downtown Knoxville where there's a lot of restaurants and shops around, and we get thousands of people that walk through there every Saturday. This year was definitely different. They moved venues so they could regulate the amount of people that came in and out of the space. So we're at like a Coliseum where they have like indoor, basically like the minor league hockey games, And so we're in this plaza outside, and it's really a nice venue. But it's way less people. So the good thing is the people that come are coming to buy. They're not just browsers that are walking through. But it's got us thinking about ways to offer the box, like a box scheme, and really boost that online ordering if that's something that we need to do in the future, because they offered curbside pickup this year. So if people weren't comfortable coming into the market, they could order online, and we could have their bag or box, waiting for them curbside. And so that's definitely been something we've talked about, and even home delivery possibly in Knoxville when we get to the new location, which we're going to be in much closer proximity to our main market stream. So anything to add to that, Beau?
Yeah, well, and one thing, we've got several thoughts, of course, for our new property, but a big one is having a multifunctional building with with a storefront in it, a farm store that would be open certain days where people could come to us and just make it more convenient. Not everybody can make it to a market on Saturday, or they don't want to go to the grocery store because it's very crowded. They could come to one of our on-farm store, and that's definitely one of our goals for the future, is to have something like that along with other local products in there, meats and cheeses and all kinds of stuff. And also we'd love to have a commercial kitchen at some point, to value add a lot of our vegetables as well. We got into fermenting several years ago, and that's something that's always going to stick with us, and it's such a delicious, nutritious product that we really think that there's a market for that as well. I mean, we eat it basically with every meal, our sauerkrauts and our other fermented foods. So that could also go along with selling at our farm store.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a huge fan of fermented foods, sauerkrauts and basically everything. And I just fermented a bunch of hot sauce, so I'm super psyched on that. The farm store is, it's kind of having a moment in the COVID era where, in fact, nobody knows this. I may as well just spill it now, that Hannah and I are moving our farm across town. Almost, it's not far, but it's like 15 minutes away. Almost exclusively, not exclusively, but pretty close, because it has a farm store option. Basically, it's a building that's pretty close to the road with plenty of parking space, that we could turn into a farm store. So
nice.
I think that the pandemic kind of illuminated that lack for us, that it's really hard for customers to get back here. Local customers, we're not as able to serve our local community. And I feel like that's something we're going to start hearing a lot more of, and how people are operating those, how they're managing the finances for them, and those sorts of things. Have you all thought kind of that far ahead, or been doing research on how you would manage that?
No. Not yet.
I'm not going to pretend we have either, really, but it's curious.
It's really just a dream, and we visited David Williams over at Sunset Market Gardens a couple months back. I guess it was Beau and I ran over there just for a day trip, and we were really inspired by his little setup, his on-farm store, and I think it just kind of got a little bit better idea of how we want to set it up, and what we want it to be, and how we want it to serve our community. And we want our farm to be very much community based and community involved as well. So so I think for a small farm to have the ability to do a farm store it's really a no-brainer. A big part of why we got into farming is to spend more time around family and where we enjoy spending time and what we enjoy doing. So a farm store seems like a natural fit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That farm in Iowa too is a kind of an inspiration for that too. Dog Urban Farm, or she's in Des Moines.
Dog Patch.
Yeah, Dog Patch. I think Curtis has interviewed her. And that was, I think it was about at least 3 years ago. She started her farm store right in. She's very urban, and some of the stuff she was doing with that was real interested. That's kind of where we got the first idea, I believe. Just to be, and
also that Fair Share farm that's out in the Midwest as well. I forget where they're at, but we had heard a podcast on Farmer to Farmer. Does that ring a bell to you, Jesse? They have.
Oh, is it the gentleman up in Indiana?
No,
Mennonite maybe.
I think he's in Kansas.
It may.
He does a lot of ferments. He does. Sorry, yeah, he knows. He does a lot of ferments.
Yeah, it's Fair. It's not the Fair Share in North Carolina, but it's Fair Share Farm as well, and they're in the Midwest somewhere, and I think maybe it could be Missouri, but anyway, they do a lot of fermented foods, and that really got us thinking as we get a little bit older, and you know what a drudgery it is to be out in the fields at 3 or 4 and 5 o'clock in the summertime, where we could move into an inside space and still be able to generate revenue and provide a value added product like fermented products. That really got us thinking about doing it too. That there's definitely other small growers out there doing it and doing it quite well.
Hey, so the episode that they're talking about here, I think, is the episode 170 of the Farmer to Farmer podcast with Rebecca and Tom of Fair Share in Missouri. So check that out. Okay, back to the interview. The one that I was thinking of was Nate Fingerly of River Ridge Farm. I'm pretty sure this is the one that's in rural Indiana, and he's doing this is a Farmer to Farmer episode that people should check out because he's doing, I think they have a pretty successful farm store, and they're not near any sort of big city, last I remember, if I remember that correctly. But yeah, I think that's just such a cool way to connect to your community and also to not have all that travel time, not have that expense of being off the farm as much. And that's something that's, I guess, is probably on your minds, tripling your farm, needing, all these, maybe you mentioned a box scheme, and doing the market, also the farm store, having to kind of maybe find some other marketing outlets? Or do you feel like your farmer's market is more or less enough to sustain triple the amount of produce?
If it's functioning, if it was, based on pre-COVID years, we believe it. Yeah, it could definitely, it wouldn't be, we couldn't move everything there, but it's an incredible market, especially at Market Square. It's amazing how much stuff we've been able to move in a very short amount of time, just from the volumes of people that come through there. So, but for how much we want to expand and grow, and we're getting more efficient and better at growing every year, we still got a long way to go. But that great market, combined with these other avenues that we want to explore, we think we could, do a good job of moving everything.
There also, I'll chime in too. There's a small food co-op which is very community based in Knoxville as well, and we're thinking about trying to get in there next year if things go well, just to supply them. They source from a lot of area growers. So one thing I guess we might add just for some other young farmers to think about too is like definitely utilize what's around, and there's all kinds of land sitting out there. If you're super pumped about getting started, just do it. And I think there's all kinds of willing landowners that if you're not in a financial position to buy your own land, just get out there and start small. That's what we've done, and we're pumping out a ton of produce on a very small scale, and see where that leads you. We really want to encourage more and more farmers. We're not trying to keep any secrets or anything. We want there to be more growers, and for food to be just more localized instead of globalized.
Are you open to sharing your numbers on that quarter acre?
Yeah, so this year we've got 4 more markets, and we should hit close to 80,000 for the year.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've had some young farmers reach out recently, and we love having them out and showing them around and just answering any questions they have. And some of them have said, I've reached out to other farms, and you all are the only ones that got back to us, and we just kind of we hate hearing that. We just think that this community is very transparent, and we need more. Obviously, we need more farming this scale to make the world go round the right way. So, kind of what Paul was saying. And another thing too is we bootstrapped this whole farm. We're not in any debt. That was the luxury of being able to work full time and construct the farm. Just out of pocket. Paul and I just equal. Anytime we put any money into the farm, we put equal amounts. And so we're just kind of, free and clear on everything that's here right now. Obviously, the new farm is a little different, but you can really start generating some money quickly. And I think Curtis Stone was huge in making that happen, or making people see that as well, along with other farmers as well.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like there's sometimes a stigma about keeping a job and starting a farm simultaneously that I don't think needs to be there. I think that's such a great, when Hannah and I were starting, we definitely picked up extra work all over the place because we didn't have a bunch of startup capital, but we did have these other skill sets that we could utilize to render capital when you needed it. Yeah, and I think that shouldn't be as stigmatized, or it should be embraced a little bit more, that maybe in the first few years you're having to hold on to your other job. And yeah. Well, Paul, Beau, thank you all so much for coming and chatting with me. I really love what you all are up to.
Thanks a lot, Jesse. Appreciate everything you guys are doing. The No-Till Growers team. You guys are awesome. Keep inspiring, buddy.
We found a lot of inspiration through your talks with all these great growers you've had on.
Well, we appreciate that. All right, if you enjoyed that episode, make sure to follow Mountain Roots Farm on Instagram and all the places. We will hook it up with links in the show notes. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're getting it. Leave a review. But this week, all reviews must find all the traffic lights in the picture and check the box. Otherwise, we're just going to assume it was written by a robot who loves the podcast. Huge thanks to Jackson Roulette and Josh Satin. Big thank you to Willie Breeding for giving me exactly the theme music I wanted and not even trying to talk me out of it. Enormous thank you, as always, to my wife, Hannah Crabtree, who has been painting up a storm at the new house while I goof around with the kids. Did you know that we're moving farms? Yeah, no big deal. Just moving a farm. Anyway, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye. I think we always kind of have approached this current property like we're not fully going to stay there forever. I think it's good to know that to an extent.
Definitely.
Because it helps you to maybe put your resources in different places. So yeah, this next farm, we feel a little bit more the house is really nice. So it'll be somewhere where we can imagine ourselves staying for a long time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same here. We set this up as a temporary gig here. And just put up a lot of caterpillar tunnels, that we know we're going to be able to pick up and take with us to the new farm. And so it's going to be nice. We're going to be getting an official high tunnel set up at the end of the year, taking advantage of the NRCS grant. And so we're putting up a 30 by 96. And so we hope to do that for a few years in a row. And it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's great. It's great when you start getting those more permanent structures like that.
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, there's also something to be said for staying mobile while you're figuring it out and trying to decide what your market is and what your direction you want to go in and all of those things. Like the caterpillar tunnels have made that such an easy decision because you don't have to jump into owning big tunnels right away for not that much money. I mean, those things, a decent one is, with all the stuff is under $3,000. Mm-hmm. So that's not a crazy investment.
No.
Oh yeah.
No, it's under $2,000.
Under $2,000. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Great products.